I kind of like when things sound like shit. It's sort of nice. Like, I got actually so into it that I had 2 pairs of earbuds. I was using it as like a lo-fi mic.
On the iPhone.
Yeah, that's why it
Take
sounds
it back,
so
Tim Cook.
good.
I like you. Hey, Sam Sanders here. Thank you so much for checking out my show this week, an entertainment show. And this week, I want to talk all about some art and an artist who has made some stuff that's been really good at helping me be sad. I say this with love. This performer, this singer-songwriter has made one of, I think, the best breakup albums of all time. And now with their new album, they're writing a kind of new playbook for how to navigate the industry. I am so honored and overjoyed to have this person in this studio because I've been listening to them for years, and now they're here in the flesh. Without further ado, you tell folks who you are because I'm just overjoyed.
My name's Caroline Rose. I don't know which camera to look at because there are many.
There are.
I'm
That
just
one's
gonna
mostly
pretend like
you.
they're not there. I'm gonna
Yeah.
talk to Bennett. Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Of course. What's the best way to describe you and what you do, Caroline? You're a singer, songwriter, you're a performer. I consider you a visual artist. And now with this new album, I kind of think you're like a music executive because you're writing your own playbook for how to do it. How do you describe yourself?
Yeah, for better or worse, I guess I am. It's so funny because like whenever people kind of ask me to describe myself, I'm just like, yeah, I do a little bit of everything. Like I love the visual art side of it. Both my parents are visual artists, so
Nice.
I was just kind of raised doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the visual side of it is definitely something I'm really excited about. But I would say first and foremost, I'm a songwriter.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of my first love, and
yeah.
will probably be the love that I come back to over and over again.
I sure hope so. Because I eat it all up. I want to jump into your new album and how your rollout is different from the way most artists put out an album these days. But first, I have to start by saying your mother brought us together.
It's so cute. Of course she
It's very
did.
cute. Long story short, I talked about how much your music meant to me on another podcast. Then she heard it, and I think she let you know.
I think so. I think that's how it happened. I think like a few people sent it to me actually, and they were like, "You should listen to this. It's a really good interview."
Okay.
And I listened to it. I wept.
Oh,
I
God.
heard your story, and
Oh,
I was
God.
like, it like makes me want to weep now. It was a beautiful interview, and I think my mom reached out to you and was like, "I'm crying."
She DM'd me, and I was like, hey, girl, hey.
Yeah.
Long story short, listeners, and we'll get to this later on in our chat, this perfect breakup album that Caroline made helped me get through a breakup. I will say more about it later, but I want to talk at length first about your new album because I find your rollout of it so fascinating. So this new album, it's called You're the Slug. I'm loving it. It is not on Spotify.
It is
That's
not.
wild.
There's just something nice about like when you find a little Easter egg
Yeah.
and it feels like it's yours.
Mhm.
I became obsessed with this artist Cindy Lee.
Okay.
And she only had her album on Bandcamp. And it was like my favorite album of I just like listened to it over and over again. It's so
Yeah.
good. And I was just thinking about that feeling and also like when I was younger and I had a car with a tape deck in it.
Yeah.
And I
What
discovered
kind of car?
it was a Honda Civic.
Yep.
I lived in it for many years. But there was a tape deck in it, and I would go to thrift stores and stuff and get like a bunch of tapes for $0.25
Oh,
and
wow.
discover all this new music.
Really?
Yeah, and I was just thinking about that and how special that is. And when you go to a record store and you're like flipping through the dollar bin and you
Mhm.
get just some random thing that becomes your favorite album, and how hard it is to find stuff like that that's modern because it all just goes on streaming and the algorithm feeds you exactly what you want to hear and
Yeah.
it like
And the
knows
stuff
you
that
so
sounds like the
well.
other stuff.
Yeah, and that like that's great because I discover a lot of music that way too.
Mhm.
I just want to change it up every once in a while, and
Mhm.
that's kind of I think who I am as a person and why I end up doing like so many different types of things because I'm like I just I might just get bored and I want to try something else. And I'm like, this is kind of fun. It makes me feel good. And I think I've just been doing so much of the same thing, just this sort of like rinse and repeat of make an album, tour it for 2 years,
Mhm.
burn out,
Mhm.
like want to quit,
Yeah.
and then do it again.
Yeah.
Um, that I'm just looking for ways to make it feel a little more uh life enhancing or
Yeah.
expanding.
Yeah, and just like a new way of doing it.
Yeah.
I do wonder though because I am obsessed with the business story of Spotify. I mean, you know the metrics and the math and the numbers. More and more artists complain about the low compensation rates on Spotify. Apparently, from the data that we see and know, if you get 1 million streams on Spotify, you might make a few $1,000s. And the pay per stream is like a fraction of a penny. While the CEO of Spotify last fiscal year made over $300 million. Are those financials a part of your calculation as well? Because I'm hearing from more and more artists kind of whispering, saying, I think Spotify might be hurting me and not being good to me. Was that a part of your calculus?
I mean, it's definitely a part of it, but I think like overall, the whole music industry across the board, the problem is like people don't really value music like we used to.
Mm,
It's just it's like ubiquitous. I mean, Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify,
yeah.
literally talks about how he he talks about music being essentially made for no money. Like,
Mm,
and that is the problem right there. Is like
yeah.
people think that it's everybody's just making it in their bedrooms,
Uh
like
huh.
no big deal. And that's not the case. I mean, as you know, you're an artist, like
Years to make this stuff.
yeah, or something could have a whole orchestra behind it, and then something is like a solo acoustic in your bedroom kind of record,
Mm-hmm.
and both art should be viable art that is valued.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and both should be seen specifically for what they are. I've talked with folks about the Spotify effect, and Eck, the head of Spotify, has talked about this too. His goal is to make playlists for people that are mood music and background music. And so this thing happens when you're on Spotify for too long, you kind of forget what you're listening to, and it's just there.
Hmm.
And that scares me because I've had days where I'll start Spotify and then it keeps going. And then I'll remember as a song is ending that I like it and then I lose it forever. And I think that, like, also what happens when someone like you puts out an album on Bandcamp in this specific way, I have to think about your art as I consume it. I have to go to it and see it. And so many artists on Spotify, they're lost in the playlist. What is the word? The playlist quicksand. Can I say that?
Yeah, I mean, I that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's AI like peppered into playlists
Yeah.
now. You can't tell what's real and what's not. And so I think like where I'm at right now, I'm just so kind of fed up with the whole system.
Okay.
It's all so disgusting to me. And I'm just like, wow, this sucks so bad. Especially just knowing how much money was in the industry like back in the early 2000s and the 90s
Mm-hmm.
um and you could really be like an unknown band and make a living
Mm-hmm.
from making music, and it's just so much harder now.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in a way it's just sort of a response to it all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just sort of tired of hearing everything sounding so incredibly perfect, and now that like AI is becoming so common,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just like a natural impulse in me to be like, ugh, like more auto tune, like more perfection. Like, there's a time and a place for everything, and sometimes I really love that,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it really hits for me. But it just when it starts feeling like it's force fed, and sometimes
Yeah.
the algorithm feels like it's force fed, like where it's sort you get what do you call that when you're like you're in the echo chamber.
Oh yeah. What I love about your new album, Year of the Slug, from what I understand, it was just like you and a guitar and like your iPhone and GarageBand.
Yeah.
That's amazing. How does that work?
I wasn't gonna put this out, but I would play it for people just
Mm-hmm.
because I've kind of just slowly been compiling music, and
Mm-hmm.
um, I I was gonna just pivot and start doing something else because the
Really?
touring industry is also just so messed up and backwards, and
Yeah. Wait, you were gonna pivot away from making music?
I was gonna keep making music. I was just gonna do it in a different way, like maybe just be producing records
Huh.
or mixing records or
Huh.
um, writing songs for other people or doing more in like film and TV. Just kind of trying to get away from the things that were really sucking the life out of me.
Yeah.
But so I was like kind of slowly accumulating all these songs,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, well, there's something here. Maybe I'll just try and flex working with somebody new. Like I won't produce anything,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just try and find somebody who can just take these songs and maybe interpret them however they would do it.
So you were gonna give them away as demos?
Yeah, kind of. And then
Wow.
I was playing them for people, and the more people I played them for, they were like, "You should just put this out, just the way that it is." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, I really like them." And I did get in the studio with somebody, and we did kind of a more produced out version of one or two of the songs.
Mm-hmm.
And I just missed the original one so much.
That you went back to the original?
I was like, there really is something about this it's so refreshing to just hear a song like
Mm-hmm.
without any frills. It's just and it sounds I can't curse
Oh
on
yes,
this,
you
right?
can.
I
Oh
can.
yeah. Oh yeah.
I kind of like when things sound like shit. It's sort of nice. Like it's sort of nice, and I have all this fancy equipment. Like I have a studio in the lower floor of the house that I live in, and it has all this nice gear and everything, and I just found myself liking the way that my little song sounded recorded into my iPhone.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
I got actually so into it that
Uh-huh.
I had 2 pairs of earbuds
Uh-huh.
because, like, to use GarageBand on your phone, you have to use the pluggy-any headphones.
Uh-huh.
You can't use
Oh, the
Bluetooth.
old school.
The old school.
Yeah.
So they're, like, really
And you must
old.
have a phone that accommodates the plug-in. Do the
Yeah.
new ones do the plug-in?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think my phone might be just old enough to
Yeah.
still have the
Yeah.
plug.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm actually still mad that Tim Cook got rid of the original,
Yo, listen,
like,
Tim
1/8
Cook, if
inch.
you're listening, we both have bones to pick with you. Because these iOS updates, player, that's not the business.
It's so annoying. Yeah, I'm like I still hold a grudge against like the getting rid of the headphone jack. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, I have these 2 old pair of like really shitty earbuds.
Mm-hmm.
And I got so used to recording this way that there's like a little, you know how like there's a little microphone in the headphone
Oh, yeah.
line?
Yeah.
I was using it as like a lo-fi mic.
Stop.
And then the other pair that I plugged into, it like
Uh-huh.
allowed me to use the microphone on my phone.
Huh.
And I learned all about like the microphones in my phone. You could use like a front, the bottom, and the back. There's 3 mics in it.
On the iPhone.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's why it
take
sounds
it back,
so
Tim Cook.
good.
I like you.
I know Tim
You're
Cook
cool.
is doing some things really right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just got really into it, and then I kind of fell in love with the way that it sounded.
Really. It's so hearing you talk about that process, which is so lo-fi for this new album. When I think about your last album, it was orchestrated. Like at points, there's like soaring strings behind you. It is epic. Which is harder or easier? All the instrumentation or the stripped down, stripped down?
That's such a good question, actually, because I think sometimes it can be deceiving. Like
Mm.
when it's sort of like a good movie. If you don't have a good script,
Yeah.
you can kind of like hide stuff behind production.
Mm-hmm.
All the like bells and whistles and like amazing acting
Uh-huh.
and special effects.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have a good song, it's really yeah. Like if you don't have a good script, you don't have a good movie. If you
There
don't
you
have a
go.
good song, you don't have a good song.
Say that like 5 times so that all of LA can hear it. Bad script, bad movie, bad song, bad song.
Yeah,
That's
like
it.
if you strip away all the production, it I like knowing that most of the songs I have ever written, I could probably play on a guitar or a
Yeah.
piano or
Yeah.
I don't know, a cappella or something, and hopefully it doesn't sound horrible.
Yeah. No,
There
it
is
doesn't.
something there
Yeah. Yeah.
to work with.
Yeah. I love that. I love You're the Slug. I've loved the music for years. I know what I think about your music conceptually, but how would you describe Year of the Slug to folks listening, watching right now?
Well, the whole concept behind it, I mean, it's not a concept. But the idea of the year of the slug. My partner always talks about having a slug day,
Hmm.
and it's basically just like moving real slow and
Yeah.
not and basically throwing out your plans or whatever goals you have for yourself and just existing.
Yeah.
And I loved it so much. I was like, that's such a perfect way to describe how I want to live my life.
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah.
not worry so much.
Yeah.
And because obviously my last album, it was a probably the most difficult time of my life.
Oh,
And
I could tell.
yeah,
I felt it in that album.
and that that was a long time ago now. So I'm in a way different place, and it's really nice to just write songs. And the whole ethos of slug life is like, write it, just put it out.
There you go.
Let people enjoy it, and it exists, and
It
that's all it
exists.
needs to be.
Yeah. How are you gonna slug the promotion of the album? You know how it goes. When an album is out, the artist is just like doing the thing. Press, bus, club, another club, bam, bam, boom, boom. Is that slug life mentality affecting the way you're gonna promote and tour this thing too?
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically stripping everything back. I'm uh not bringing a band on tour because the whole
Really?
album is just
You and the guitar.
me. Yeah. Um, and that was all on purpose too, because it's so easy for me to just uh tour by myself. I
Yeah.
can pretty much play all the places that we can't get to with a band, that because it costs too much money,
Uh,
and I can go to all these places that I really never get to go to. So, I
mm-hmm.
mean, I'm starting a tour in Miami. I've never played Miami for this
Really?
reason. Like, it's
Huh.
just
Even though you have a song called Miami.
hilariously, I've never played Miami.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
Um, and I'm playing all independent venues. So, that's like another big part of this. There's not a single venue that I'm playing is owned by Live Nation or AEG.
Okay.
Yeah, who have really bought like I mean, Live Nation's literally getting sued right now
Yeah.
by the government for being
For owning all the levers of production.
yeah,
Like,
for
it's messed up.
breaching antitrust violations. Like um it's just the whole industry, it's so driven by greed. Um and it was really hard to watch. Like in 2020 when I wrote my last album, and
Mm-hmm.
or when I started writing it, um it was also part of what was so difficult during that time, was like watching all these clubs
Mm-hmm.
that are essentially the working class in the music industry. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you've got all these clubs, all these people that work for these clubs, and they're all independent. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't have the muscle of a corporation to like bail them out when things get hard.
Mm-hmm.
They just closed. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
were just closing left and right, getting bought up by corporations, or just getting pushed out.
Yeah.
And that trend just kind of
Oh,
continued.
yeah.
It continues
Oh, yeah.
today.
Well, and then now it's like, artists we love, like Beyonce. Yeah, I saw the last tour of hers 4 times. But I know that for the majority of artists working today, they can't execute a tour at that level. And the ticket masters and Live Nations have made themselves such companies now that they can really only be really good to artists that big. And everyone
Exactly.
else who plays that game, they're not winning.
And as we know from Reaganomics, the trickle down effect
It ain't
doesn't
happening.
work.
Beyonce's not cutting you a check. She should. Cut me one too, Beyonce, because I've cut you several. But yeah, it's not trickling down. Do you think it gets better?
No. Do you think it gets better?
No. Which makes me
No.
sad.
But I think there are, as we have learned from, when politics and the economy are a disaster, people tend to come together and like form community in times like this. So I think there is a major silver lining, and I am definitely not the only one that is like,
Yeah.
this is fucked. I think everyone I know is looking at this and being like, this is messed up.
Yeah.
And it's what's happening in the music industry is the exact same thing that's happening in the American economy. Like you're seeing like the wealthy get more
Mm-hmm.
and more wealthy. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
Taylor Swift is endorsed by Capital One. She's a literal billionaire. Like these are the people that could truly change
Yeah.
the like Taylor Swift's and Beyonce's, all the people that work at that level,
They
they
could
could
change
change
it. Well,
everything.
and it felt like for a second Taylor Swift might have. She was kind of in a tiff with Spotify for a second, but then no.
Yeah, I know. There was a moment there. The
Right?
moment passed.
It did. It did. How do you feel as an independent artist watching these bigger artists function on that level? Because people who know me know I love Beyonce.
Oh,
I think
so do
she's a
I.
genius. I
She
think she's
is.
great. I think she is in the way that like Prince was the performer of his era and Stevie of his. I kind of see Beyonce as that for us now. But I also know that like Beyonce is perhaps the biggest symbol of music hypercapitalism right now. It's very conflicting.
It
As
is
someone in
conflicting,
the
yeah.
industry, how do you feel about it all?
Well, I don't think that I'm the type of person that would ever look at somebody and be like, "This is your duty."
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just I feel like most people a major frustration with the ultra wealthy that they're just sort of accumulating wealth and not giving a shit about anyone else.
Yeah.
So I think it's just it's frustration more than anything,
Yeah.
and just being like, dang, like unless we unionize, unless we organize, like there no one is going to help out the lower
Yeah.
classes, or like the like working and middle classes of.
Totally. In all sectors, including the arts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very interesting hearing you talk about unionizing in regards to the music industry because at the Grammys a few weeks ago, Chappell Roan, who won Best New Artist, she said in her acceptance speech, I think new artists, struggling artists, up and coming artists should get like free healthcare.
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah,
So badass.
take it further. And it's like I hear Chappell saying that. I hear you rejecting big players like Spotify, rejecting big players like Live Nation as you put your new album out. Why aren't more artists saying what y'all are doing? Why?
Well, cuz it is a major risk. I mean, I think if I wasn't at a point where I was like, well, I actually hate this so much and it's not serving me to the point where
Yeah.
I'm like, I will literally just get another job. Like I'll either pivot to another sector of the music industry where I can make a living, like a
Mhm.
healthy living,
Mhm.
or I will simply I have this friend who she's so great and she has such a good head on her shoulders, and she has a family. She's also what I would consider successful musician, like
Mhm.
making a good living.
Mhm.
And she says this thing. She's like, it's worked out for us, but as soon as it doesn't, I'll just go work at the liquor store down the street. Like
Wow.
I don't have this, I don't know, desire that like I must do this.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really good way to look at it, cuz it prevents me from doing the things that really move me, because I'm like, well, I will just pivot.
Okay.
I will just pivot, and it
Okay.
makes me feel like I can take more risks. And a lot of people aren't in that position. I would consider myself a major success story. I make a living doing what I
Yeah.
love,
Yeah, and have so for a while.
and have so for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I consider myself a success in that way, and a lot of people aren't even at that place.
Mhm.
And I think that's another reason why I'm so frustrated. It's like I'm I I worked my way up to get to a place where I can make a living doing this, and there are other bands who are doing the same system that I did,
Mhm.
and it's even harder
Yeah.
for them
Oh yeah.
to like get to a place where they can just make a living,
Mhm.
because it's like that foundation
Yeah.
is being
Oh,
eliminated.
totally. Well, and the people who would set you up for success are asking for more from new artists before they even get a chance. It happens the same with actors I talk to. It's like, oh, you might not get the gig if your social media following isn't big enough. You might not
Yeah.
get the record deal unless you're already big on TikTok. And it's like, well, how do you do that? How do you do it? So like on top of the financial craziness of the industry right now, this era of social video and social media has made all kinds of artists making things like music have to become entertainment studios before they even get picked up. It's
Yeah.
crazy. What's your favorite song on Year of the Slug?
Ah, well, I don't know. It keeps rotating,
Okay.
and I think something that's fun, like if I put a song on an album, at some point it probably was my favorite song.
Okay.
Like but I think right now one of the songs I'm gonna play is called "Conversation with Shiv,"
Yeah.
but everybody calls it the Liquid K song, so it's yeah,
This
but
is the Betty Ford one?
yeah, the Betty
Oh,
Ford
yeah,
one,
girl.
yeah, yeah. So I'll probably play that.
Okay. Unpack that before you play it. What's the song about?
Well, I recently had a friend reach out to me who I haven't talked to in a really long time,
Mm-hmm.
and it got me
Always
thinking.
scary when that happens. What do you want?
It
What
was
has
that,
happened? Who has
yeah,
died?
it's like bittersweet because
Yeah.
it's kind of nice catching up with an old friend, but at the same time you're like, wow, we have changed so much and
Mm-hmm.
our lives are so different. And that has happened with a number of friends. I had oh, man, I've had some troubled friends.
Yeah.
And I think that's just kind of natural in your when you're like a rebellious youth.
Yeah.
You end up having friends that just go in like very different paths
Mm-hmm.
um and I changed her name, but it's sort of based on this conversation that I had with my friend, but it's also infused some these are all real life scenarios
Mm-hmm.
like infused into the song,
Mm-hmm.
but some of them are from some different friends. I
Okay. So you
just
got several friends going through
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
there's one point where it's like either you or the friend is like, meet me at the Betty Ford clinic or outside the Betty Ford clinic, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's like that's real.
Yeah. That happens. That
Yeah.
happens. When you write a song like that, do you care if your friends know it's about them?
Um good question. I well, I think I would prefer them not to know cuz
Okay.
I and that's like kind of why I change names
Yeah.
almost all the time
Yeah.
in my songs
Yeah.
cuz I don't want anybody to feel like I'm using them. But at the same time it's like this is my life
Yeah.
and I write about my experiences in
Yeah.
my life. So sometimes I'm writing about things that happened to me. Sometimes I infuse what happened to me into a song about someone else. And this is, this is like creative liberties as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
You are using your experiences to come up with something new.
Yeah.
And sometimes you like stretch the truth. Sometimes it's the plain hard truth.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's a combination of both. So
I love that. Unless it's a breakup album, in which case it's about you.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
about you.
that was pretty much about me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I want to have you perform that song, but to close the loop on this industry chat, we've talked about these nefarious companies not doing well by artists, but as a consumer of music who just loves it, how can I do better to support artists like you that are trying to navigate this landscape in which the big players can sometimes be predatory? I'm I'm reconsidering which streaming platforms I use. I'm reconsidering whether it's better to like buy the vinyl or do this or do that to like support artists I love. Talk to listeners, many of whom are going to become new Caroline Rose fans watching or hearing this. What's the best way to support artists you love in this era of whatever the heck we're in?
Well, I think what would be, I talk about this a lot too, because, I don't think deleting Spotify is the answer. Spotify,
That's surprising. Okay.
well, yeah,
Okay.
because Spotify actually helps artists get
Now that I think about it,
played.
I found you through Spotify.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's not the point. Like the point is not to completely vilify Spotify because they actually made an amazing platform
Yeah.
that like I use.
Okay.
It's a good platform. The problem is we are not being paid enough. Like that's the problem. It's there's a simple fix here. So
Money.
it's just being compensated for your work.
Mm.
Like and I think the problem across the board is that people don't understand that artists need to be paid as though it's a real job. Like that is such a thing in the US. It's not in other countries they have grant money for artists.
Oh yeah.
Art
Sweden
is,
like pays its pop stars.
oh yeah, there's grant money in Australia, there's grant money in Canada, there's grant money in the UK.
Yeah.
They really value art as a part of the culture,
Mhm.
and it is not the case here.
Mm.
Here it's like people joke about like not like getting a real job, you know?
Mhm.
It's just not seen as a viable career option, and especially in music. And I noticed this when during the SAG-AFTRA strike,
Yeah.
when everybody was on strike
Yeah.
in Hollywood, and I was sort of like loosely paying attention to it. And then when I actually looked through what the unions were striking for,
Mhm.
it was for like retirement plans to be able to pay your mortgage and have a family.
Mhm.
Musicians are we're so far from that like I don't know anybody that it is like in a place to have a family because they're like I just simply don't make enough. Like
Yep.
I don't have a retirement plan.
Yep.
It's so far removed from that because people don't value music in the same way.
Yeah.
Like we value it when it's in arenas. People will pay exorbitant fees
Yo.
on those tickets.
Yo.
But it's like it is not being valued everywhere else. Like
Yeah.
it's just it's pretty brutal. So I think that's the problem is
Yeah. We
you
don't
know,
value it.
we just don't value it enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That said, if and when you do find artists you love and value, buy the merch and buy the vinyl. That's
And
better money for y'all, right?
yeah, and I will add one more thing.
Yeah.
I think if musicians are not the only ones complaining about what's happening, I actually think the power of complaining is it's really amazing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if enough people complain about something,
Mhm.
it changes things way faster than the law does.
That's true.
It changes cultures. Like
Yeah.
and I think people complaining about how artists aren't being paid or how I think like kind of vilifying Daniel Ek is
Might
the
work.
right move because until he starts paying people properly,
Yeah.
he sort of is a villain.
There you go.
Like call it like it is.
Call it like it is. Call it like it is. Yeah. Well, on that note, I want you to play a song from Year of the Slug. We talked about this song. We're going to hear it. And then after that, we're going to come back from a break and we're going to talk about, and I mean this, one of the greatest breakup albums of all time, The Art of Forgetting.
Thanks.
Yeah.
How the hell are you? I guess I'm doing fine. Hard to believe it's been such a damn long time. So you got another bun in the oven and you're getting an abortion. But all that pressure to get married's gone now that your grandma's dead. But you still wanna be somebody. Yeah, you wanna be somebody. Let's get together at the downtown Hardee's. Ooh, it's been a long time coming, seeing you around. They shut the sugar factory down and it's all condos now. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, seeing your face. I think the last time I saw you, you were deep in a hole of liquid cave. So you're still living outside New York, hopping around a bunch of spots you can't afford. A bubblegum situation, a hapless provocation, be a candlelit conversation, or the lonely modern layman. But you still wanna meet somebody. Yeah, you're gonna be somebody. Let's go rob the Heartbeat lobby. Did you ever figure out where the heart is? Ooh, it's been a long time coming, seeing you around. So the money ran out, but you get back dancing now. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, knocking at my door. I'm sorry how I left things with you, curled up on the bathroom floor. Really could have been a better friend, even though I really loved you then. I left you just like your daddy did. I really am so sorry, Chef. Losing on an 8-ball, hanging out at the Alamo, Indian six to the big guitar, sucking down a full of gore, jumping naked in the reservoir, smashing bottles on a brick wall. Can you pick me up in Baltimore? Yeah, I'm outside the Betty Ford. 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 Yeah, I'm outside the Betty Ford.
Okay, we're back. We're Caroline Rose. Can we get super freaking emo for a little bit? Can we like prepare
Let's
to
go.
cry?
Let's
Okay.
go.
All right. I want to talk about your album, The Art of Forgetting. It is one of those breakup albums that just sticks to the bones. And I want to talk to you about my journey with the album and your journey with the album. But I think to start, I got to ask you, what is the art of forgetting?
Oh, what a question. I I kind of like that it's can be interpreted in some different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because when I was writing that album, uh, I it's a line in the song Miami.
Yeah.
And when I wrote that song, I had a very specific idea of what it meant to me.
What was that idea then?
I just wanted to avoid the pain, like forget everything. Like if I could have taken a pill to just forget
Mm.
everything, I truly would have.
Yeah.
I was just in such a rough place, and um yeah, I like to joke about like when you are at rock bottom or pretty close to the bottom, you have a really beautiful view of the sky.
Woo!
And
Wow.
that's kind of where I was at. I was
Wow.
like, okay, this is really brutal. But I have to laugh because it's just like this is all I've got is like up. I have to like there's only one way from here.
Yeah.
And so like over the kind of process of just kind of getting my life together, and it wasn't just a breakup, it was also I think I was experiencing what I now consider an identity crisis.
Okay. Say more.
Um I think I think what was happening, I didn't I didn't really understand how to take care of myself
Mm.
in the way that I knew how to with other people.
Mm.
Um and maybe that's just a byproduct of my upbringing. I don't really know why.
Mm-hmm.
But I just didn't really know how to truly love myself. Like
Yeah.
really be there.
Yeah.
And I was put I was putting a lot of my joy in external things,
That
kind of
part.
like relying on external
That
things.
part.
And then as soon as those things went away, like for
Where's your
instance,
joy? Yeah.
I was just putting so much time into my career, and I had all these goals for myself and my band and getting my band
Mm-hmm.
to a place where I could like make this a good living for everybody and we'd all be happy and like
Mm-hmm.
live over a rainbow. And I was just so focused, hyper focused on this kind of all these goals that I set for myself that I just forgot how to live,
Yep.
and that
Yeah. I get it.
the beauty of life is like
Yeah.
in the small things.
Yeah.
Um
No, it's true. Well, and then it's like you talk about these goals, hitting these goals. It's like every professional goal I've ever had in my career, as soon as I hit it, I was immediately unsatisfied again. Immediately. You
yeah.
get the thing you think you're supposed to get, and then you immediately think of the next thing you're supposed to get.
Yeah, and you hear this all the time, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
hear like, "Oh, that, the goalpost moves."
Yeah.
but I feel like it sneaks up on you because
Mm,
I feel like I've always kind of been kind of understood these things,
yeah.
but when I was in it, I realized how quickly you can get diverted from
Mm-hmm.
the things that are really good for you and
Yeah.
healthy.
Yeah.
So I was kind of in that place, and then obviously the pandemic happened, and that was just like one of the things that was devastating. But at the same time, so I put out this album in March 6th of 2020,
Yeah.
and I put all this time into it, and it was really difficult to make for a number of reasons. But
Yeah.
by the time it came out, I was just like, wow, I actually need a break so badly.
Mm-hmm. And then
Um,
a week later, pandemic hits.
no, literally, it was crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was dealing with a breakup, and this sort of identity crisis,
Mm-hmm.
truly relearning how to love myself. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that sounds so dramatic, but honestly,
It's
it
for real.
was.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
very dramatic. Um,
Well, and then on top
yeah.
of that, so I mean, this is an album about a breakup that you put out as the pandemic is hitting, but interspersed between the beautiful songs in this beautiful album are voicemails from your grandmother,
Hmm.
which is another layer of emotion there. What was that about?
Well, she was dying and 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 losing her memory, and I was just thinking about how I was in so much pain and
Yeah.
self-suffering.
Mm.
Um, I just would have done anything to forget about all of the things that were causing me pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's my grandma who's like losing her mind, who's losing her memory, and she would do anything to hold on to her memories.
Yeah.
And so I just found it
She's
really
not wanting the art of forgetting.
exactly. And I was just like, wow, the paradox of this. And it was just kind of beautiful too because she would call me every day and sort
Oh.
of ended up being this really necessary uh security in my
Yeah.
life that I was like, okay, I feel like absolute shit and I do not know how to take care of myself. I don't know how to love myself. I'm going to try.
Yeah.
But like I've got my grandma,
Oh, and
like I've
she's
got my
checking in.
therapist and I've got my grandma
Yeah.
and like my parents and my best friend and I'll just hold on to those things
Yeah.
until I can learn how to take care of myself. So
Yeah.
it was really comforting.
Yeah. When did she pass away?
She passed away I think right before the album came out. Yeah.
That must have been a sucker punch.
It was. I mean, well she just was such a force.
Mm-hmm. She sounded like it from the
She,
voice
she
notes.
was I mean, she had a nice long life. She was like 800 years old. So like she had a great life.
Yeah.
But it is wild like when someone is such a force in your family. She's was kind of like a rock in my family.
Yeah.
That when she finally did die, we were like, "Wow, it really happened. It like finally actually happened."
Yeah.
And she left a big hole in our
Yeah.
family for
Yeah.
sure.
It's so interesting hearing the backstory about your grandmother in the album because I knew as I was listening to it repeatedly for so long that your grandmother did pass away. And I discovered your album right around the time that my mother passed away. And so I had been a fan of yours forever, but then I really dug into the art of forgetting because it felt so similar to my life. So my mother died in June of 2023, and then a month later, I ended a serious relationship. And so like both of those things happening at once, everyone was like, "That must be really weird to like have those two things happen together." And I would tell folks, I'd be like, "Yeah, but also I found this album that's like kind of that. I found this album where this artist is singing about a breakup, and then you hear voicemails of like this woman, mother figure in their lives who dies." And so I glommed onto it so much. And in this weird way, I didn't know you. You didn't know me. I don't know how much we have in common, but I felt incredibly latched to you because of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm
You know,
crying.
it's like, and like I just want to tell you, and I want to talk about the grief on the album and the grief that I felt expressed through it, because my whole journey with your album just brought me to this moment where I had to look at like grief, capital G, differently. And I've told this story on the podcast that your mother heard and connected us through, but I want to tell it again for folks who haven't heard it before, that are checking out this episode. Long story short, my mother dies, the breakup happens. I'm sad, 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 and I do that thing that Southern Californians do, where you find a way to go be sad on like a different beach. Like literally, I was like, I can go to the beach in LA all the time. I want to go be sad in San Diego. Those beaches are cute. So I booked a hotel on the water, like near the seals, and was like, I'm just gonna be here and like vibe out. And I remember I played a podcast episode from some friends of mine where they talked about literally the power of blue spaces and water. And then I played your album over and over and over again. And there was, turns out, I literally went for this like sad breakup, my mother is dead weekend. The hotel I end up at, they, I didn't know that they're big for weddings. I shit you not, I get there and there's like 2 or 3 weddings that weekend. And I'm like, you got to be, you're shitting me. I didn't sign up for this. What the hell do you mean? But I was like, I'm here. I'm staying. I'm enjoying my sad weekend. I'm going to just vibe with my feelings. And there was this moment, one of the nights I was there, I ended up, after walking the beach for hours and watching the seals and seeing the people have their wedding at the hotel, I ended up on the same balcony where a couple hours before had like done their toast in their first dance. I was on that balcony late at night by myself, watching the water, which was so blue it was almost black, playing your song The Kiss over and over again, smoking a cigarette, which I shouldn't do, and don't repeat that to anybody. But I was like, oh my God, I think I feel sad in the most beautiful way possible. The sadness and the grief that your music had become the soundtrack of gave me this like moment of beauty that I don't think I could have fully understood unless I was that sad, unless I was grieving that much, unless I had your voice in my ears being sad with me. So I don't know. All this to say, I thank you for showing me that grief can also give us things, and grief can also help us appreciate beauty in a way that we wouldn't if we weren't sad.
Yeah.
You know? So that's it. I had to tell you, and I had to tell you to your face. And to be able to tell you to your face is an honor. That's all.
Well, that means so much to me. I'm crying.
It's okay. It's okay. It's allowed. It's allowed.
Yeah. Um. Well, your story is really moving, and
Your music is really moving.
I'm crying like when I first heard you talk about this, because um you know uh
It's okay. Take your time.
yeah, I I think it's important to hear people publicly be sad.
Yes.
Um
Yes.
and I think it's important to like really let it go. Like when you're feeling it, really feel it. And
Yes.
uh this album was a major wild card for me. Like,
Really?
well, it doesn't sound anything like my the 2 albums before it, and
It
I
sure
got a
doesn't.
lot of flack for that, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, I just and I made it cuz I needed to, and
Mm-hmm.
it moves me so, it makes me so happy knowing that like it other people have connected to it in the same way, because it really was an album for people grieving.
It sure was. And
Yeah.
like, so much of my life was changed in that year of deep grief. So there was my mama dying, then the breakup. Then 2 or 3 months later, I lost a big job. And your music was there with me throughout all of it. But I think that like the biggest lesson for me was just like, grief's not bad.
Yeah.
Grief's not bad. It is a part of life. It is also necessary, and it brings us things that are sometimes good.
Totally.
Like that's the thing where I was like, oh, light switch, light switch. And so thinking of that and thinking of that lesson that I learned in part through your work, I want to ask you, getting through that breakup album, getting through that breakup, getting through your grandmother dying and the grief of your album, what did your grief teach you?
Oh man. Well, it wasn't I think it wasn't just the grief that sounds so cheesy, but
It's good.
I
We love
feel
cheese
like
here.
the process of allowing myself to feel whatever came up,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's grief is part of it because it is, there is so many people have these associations with uh certain feelings being bad,
Yep.
like being uh like we have this kind of war on pain,
Yeah.
like the anti-pain, everything. Like we
Mm-hmm.
cannot feel pain, must take a
Mm-hmm.
pill for every
Yeah.
type of pain.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things that we can learn from pain,
Yeah.
or that we can it's like our body trying to tell us something. The way that we hold back grief is so unhealthy. And I mean, if you look at other cultures, they experience grief so differently.
Yep.
And it's very emphatic, it's very dramatic, it's very like
Oh, yeah.
physical.
Have you seen a funeral in any country outside of America?
No, for real.
It's
This
a
is
production.
it's a
It's gonna go
production.
on days. They're gonna take their time. They're wearing this color clothes for months. It's a whole thing. We just and like here, put them in the ground, move on.
Oh yeah, there's like barely any time to
Mm-hmm.
it yeah, it's wild, our relationship with grief here.
Yeah.
It's almost like just take a pill for it.
Yep.
Don't worry about it.
Yep.
Like just never you why be sad when you don't ever have to be?
Uh huh.
Like why feel anxiety when you don't ever have to feel anxiety ever again?
Yeah.
Just take a pill for everything.
Yeah.
And it's like you miss out on the experience of processing, like letting it happen.
Mm-hmm.
It teaches you something about life, about letting go.
Yep.
And you're asking me what the art of forgetting, like what that means to me. What it means to me after processing all of that really heavy shit,
Mm-hmm.
it is like a totally different meaning now. It feels
Huh.
like the art of forgetting is just like the process of letting go.
Yeah.
Like forgetting doesn't have to be a pill that you take to wash everything away and just eliminate all pain. It can be the process of naturally forgetting things because you've moved on,
Yeah.
because you've processed everything in a healthy way. You've allowed yourself the the privilege of feeling things. We're
Yep.
human beings. Like it's an amazing experience to
Yeah.
feel stuff.
Yeah.
It's the odds of us being on this planet at this time are
Mm-hmm.
incredible. It's like a miraculous event.
Yeah.
And the fact that we can feel stuff, even the bad, quote unquote bad stuff,
Yeah.
it's that's a miracle too. It's kind of
Yeah.
amazing that we can feel this. And uh I don't know. I when I cry, I just sort of let it happen. I mean, case in
Yes.
point, I
Same.
just let it happen. And I think it's good for people to see that. Like we should just normalize people experiencing things in real time.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
It's okay. It feels like what you're saying is the art of forgetting is the art of living. It's the art of
Yeah.
living. You got to live your feelings. You got to live your journey. You got to live your story. And like, it's allowed. It's allowed. Like, this was also a thing where it's like, I didn't know how long I was allowed to talk about how sad I was. I didn't know how long I could bring up those feelings. And so, in large part, when I was scared about if I could talk about how sad I was feeling, I would just turn you on, because you were always there. But it's hearing you talk about what you're talking about. It's like I want what you're speaking of for all of us. This ability to feel the feelings and let them be there and let them live. I think that your music is asking its listeners to do that. And I don't know. I want more of it. Am I asking you to write another breakup album? I don't know, Caroline.
Oh, for the love of God, I hope not.
Last question before we get to another song. Another thing I read you say in an interview that really speaks to some of the things that we talked about in the first half of our chat, navigating the music industry right now. You said once, quote, "My career is never going to love me back." Wow.
It's real.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, you can be the most successful, rich, famous person ever, and it's not a real relationship. It like
Woo.
it's just true. I think at the end of my life, whenever that may be, I want to look back and be like, I took care of my people. Like
Yeah.
I have to reprioritize what matters to me, and I think for so long I just cared about these kind of, like I was saying before, these external things, or
Mm-hmm.
these sort of superficial things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really great to have a career. It's like great to be ambitious and have dreams, but I think it's also just good to keep in mind that those are just things,
Yeah.
and they're not relationships. They're not real, tangible,
Mm-hmm.
uh, life expanding, life giving things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just want to keep that in the back of my mind.
I love that. Be a slug and take care of your slugs.
Take care of your slugs.
Take care of your slugs. With that, another song?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Caroline Rose.
I've got something to say. Baby, I've got to take it or leave it. It's not your fault. It's just the way you are right now. Tell me what is wrong, 'cause I'm no longer having fun. I'll get all, I'm done. Life goes on. I just gotta take a beat, get some fresh air in my lungs. I just gotta do my thing and shake it off. If only it were that easy. I'll flicker the wrist, the turn of the page to let you go. My God, you make such a hot brick wall. So instead, I'm beating my head against the dashboard of your compact car. Just tell me what you want. Testing, testing. Is this thing on? Boy, you're gonna hate this song. Just tell me what you want. I'm an actor, 'cause I'm scared, and I'm fully unprepared for this. Are you trying to kill me? I'll block out all the signs. Let's give this one more try. I just can't bear to lose you. I am just pretending not to lose my mind. My mind. So what do we do now? If there's nothing left to say,
we shake hands? Do we embrace? Do we just walk away? I'm becoming someone else. 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 I'm becoming someone else.
Once again, Caroline Rose, your music has helped me think about grief in new and beautiful ways. And I thank you for your art and that you are still making it. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.